Díomh agus fáilte arás to the Crazy House Prices podcast, the podcast where I help you buy your own home, understand the madness of the Irish housing market and generally just adult a bit better. I'm your host, Kieran McQueen, and two things I want to talk about this week. So firstly, I finally launched something that I've been working on for quite a while called Home Buyer Ready. I've mentioned bits and pieces of it before here and there and on my Instagram, but it's actually live now and people can use it for free. So I want to properly explain what it is because it's much bigger than just like one tool or like say one property report. And then I want to get into a really interesting piece from the Business Post about how much the state is now spending on housing, because the figure they came up with is nearly 12 billion euro a year. And when you actually look at where all that money is going, I think there are some fairly big questions that need to be asked. But first, let's chat about Home Buyer Ready. So Home Buyer Ready is basically my attempt to put everything you need to buy or build a home in Ireland into one place. So it's homebuyerready.ie, and that's just the easiest way I can explain it. So obviously for the last, say, 6 years on Instagram, I've been answering the same types of questions through messages and then going through things in my podcast. I wrote my book, I have my webinars, things like, you know, how much can I borrow, from the basics right up to really kind of intricate things like what happens when I go sale agreed, what's my solicitor supposed to do, what all questions about the government schemes, all that kind of things. What happens if I'm buying an apartment or if I'm building a house on my own or if I'm buying somewhere in the countryside. So I just kept thinking that there has to be a better way of doing this than answering people one message at a time. So that's basically what Home Buyer Ready is trying to do. It takes all of that information and puts it into something that you can actually use while you're trying to buy a home or build a home. So there are a few different parts to it. So the property reports are probably the headline feature of it, and I'll come back to those in a second, but that's only one part of the whole site. So there's an assistant where you can ask questions about buying a home in Ireland at any time. So it's basically like having me available 24/7. So rather than Googling something and ending up with kind of advice that's maybe not suitable for Ireland, who might be UK or American based or whatever, you can ask something like, what happens after I go sale agreed? And when should I give notice to my landlord? What's the difference between Help to Buy and the First Home Scheme? Or like kind of what should my solicitor actually be doing at this stage? So there's the chatbot will answer all of that for you, or the assistant, as I like to call it, because chatbot's a bit of a, you're not really allowed to use that term anymore because people get annoyed. But the assistant basically, it's trained on all of my information. I put it all in one place and it reads from that. So it's not like Googling. It's not going to give you an answer outside of it. It's not going to try and guess anything. It's just all of my content in one place. And then I also have this full toolkit that basically takes you through the buying process from the beginning right through to getting your keys. So it goes right from getting mortgage ready, finding a home, looking at homes, bidding, sale agreed, the whole legal process, common delays, new builds, self builds, apartments, rural properties, everything. There's also like 50 quick tips. There's a glossary there. There's a search function. There's basically just absolutely everything. There's even checklists and templates as well that you can use, viewing scorecards, bidding logs, contact sheets. There's a whole property tracker. Then there's a deposit builder section which lets you work out what your actual deposit is, how much you need to save until you get to your target, say. So it's all your own savings, how much you get for Help to Buy, the First Home Scheme, and all the different rules dependent on your own circumstances. And it handles second-time buyers as well, because not everybody is trying to buy a home. It is a first-time buyer, which like sounds obvious, but a lot of calculators do seem to forget that. There's also a mortgage section with all the current mortgage rates. It's updated every day, and it includes kind of cashback and a mortgage switcher calculator there as well, so you can see whether moving lender makes sense and when you kind of take everything into account. There's an Irish housing and mortgage news part as well, but it's filtered to try and give you the stuff that's actually kind of relevant to here, rather than clicking on some story and getting them realizing it's about the UK or whatever. So there will also be monthly live webinars, and if you can't do the live, then there's going to be, well, they'll be recorded maybe and then put on the archive, and you can kind of watch them whenever you like. The property tracker that I have is really cool. So this is somewhere where you save kind of all the houses that you're considering. You put your viewing notes in, you score the properties against each other, you keep your kind of contacts all together and log your bids as they happen. And basically, if you're viewing, say, 4 or 5 houses over a few weeks, then you do kind of start forgetting what was in which house and all that. So you're trying to remember which one had the south facing garden, which one had, a bathroom that needed doing, or which one needed new windows, which estate agent told you what. So the idea is that it all sits there in one place. And then there's the property reports, which are probably the part I'm most excited about. So buying a home is probably the biggest financial decision most of us will ever make, unless we win the lotto. But the mad thing is, you can end up just like making those decisions with not a whole lot of information. You might spend weeks researching a €900 phone, or months looking at cars. And then when you go view a €450,000 house twice, and you only see it for about 20 minutes each time, and suddenly you're expected to decide what's it worth and how much you should bid on it. So the estate agent on the other side of that conversation, they do this all day, every day. They know the market, they know what houses sold for nearby, they know whether the asking price is realistic or whether it was deliberately set low to get people through the door. You probably don't know any of that, and that's where Home Buyer Ready comes in, and that's my aim with it. So there's kind of two questions every buyer wants answered. Is the house priced property, and how far should I go when the bidding starts? So your solicitor can't answer that for you, your mortgage broker's not going to answer it, your parents might have an opinion on it, your friends might tell you what they think it's worth, but none of that really tells you what this particular house is worth to you today. So the really frustrating thing is that a lot of the information you need is already public. The property price register is public, planning applications are public, flood maps, BER information, all the SEI grants, transport information, crime rates, everything, but it's all scattered all over the place. So with the report, say you view a house on Saturday and you're interested in it, you go on to Home Buyer Ready, you type in the address, and roughly 20 seconds later, it generates a report on the actual property. So a typical report is around about 17 pages long. And on the price side, then it pulls in comparable sales from the official property price register. So they will give you what homes have actually sold for. So then it gives you an estimated price range and shows you where those numbers came from. And it gives you a suggested bidding strategy, including, say, an opening bid, a best and final figure, and a walk away figure. It also shows you how the asking price compares with nearby sales. And then it looks at the property itself. So the BER, the running costs, potential renovation costs if it needs work, the grants that might apply, which way the garden faces, how much sunlight you might get in the summer. So it just basically tells you absolutely everything. And then it goes through what planning applications are nearby, what the flood risks are, what schools are nearby, bus, rail, whatever, broadband, everything, local crime figures. And then you save that into your property tracker folder. And of everything in that report, I think the walkaway figure could be one of the most useful things. So I get messages from people who are in bidding wars and might say, we're not going above whatever. And then somebody comes in and bids $2,000 more than that, and they don't know what to do. So at that stage, you're kind of already emotionally invested. So you might have imagined yourself living there. You might have worked out where kids might be sleeping. You might probably have mentally put furniture into the rooms. And then suddenly the number you said you would never go above starts to move. So the idea is to decide that figure before you get too emotionally attached, and look at your finances. You look at the nearby sales, look at the house, and decide what your absolute limit is. Then when the bidding starts getting a bit silly on a Thursday afternoon or whatever, you're not trying to make that decision under pressure. You've kind of already made it in advance. But there is, as good as I think the website is, there is a bit of a limitation with these reports. So the property price register is very limited in the information that it records. So it gives you the address and the sale date and the price, but it doesn't tell you how many bedrooms a house had, how big it was, what condition it was in. So if two houses on the same road sold recently, one might have been a 3-bed that needed 150 grand spent on it, and the other might have been a renovated 4-bed, but the register doesn't tell you that information. So when the report first runs, the comparable sales are just like a starting point, and then the system then shows you exactly which properties it used, and you can then remove the ones that are clearly not like a good proper comparison, and then add information where you know it, and then you basically rerun the report again. So I actually think it's really important to be clear about that, because I don't want to pretend that there's like some magic algorithm that I've sorted out that knows exactly what every house in Ireland is worth. There's not. It gives you the information and it shows you exactly where it got it from and helps you improve it then. So like the first report you run, it's just a starting place. You need to maybe rerun it a few times as you do a bit of research on the comparables, and then it gets a more accurate figure for you. And then it doesn't replace obviously solicitors, surveyors, brokers, professional valuations, all of that stuff. The whole point is to make sure that you're going into the process much better informed and hopefully asking the right questions. So the whole website is still in testing, and it's not ready to go quite yet. So accounts are free at the moment while I'm testing everything, and I've not set final prices yet. So it's just go in, basically have a look, Tell me what you think. There's a feedback button on it. If anything's confusing, let me know. If there's something you think should be in there, tell me. So I've had thousands of reports already being run on it while I've been testing it, and the feedback has changed loads already. So eventually there will be paid memberships for people who want to access absolutely everything and run unlimited number of reports while they're house hunting. And I'm doing a kind of founding members list. So if you get in now on the free one, you'll probably get a lower price. But right now, you can just set up a free account. It's homebuyerready.ie. So the simplest way of putting it is it's not just like a house report website. It's basically somewhere where you can go from the point where you first decide you want to buy a home or build a home right through to mortgage prep, search, viewing, bidding, building, sale agreed, getting your keys. And if you're trying to figure out how to buy a home in Ireland, my new website, it's live. So set up a free account. It's homebuyerready.ie. You're probably overpaying for your mortgage protection. Now, I'm not, because I use Beat the Bank and I've been dealing with them for years. They're an Irish company, and in a world where most companies in the home buying process are out for themselves, it's refreshing to have one that genuinely cares about you. As cliche as that sounds, but they really do. So how they work is they check the main insurers, they match the best price, and then they take more off. It's quick, it's online, and they handle all the paperwork. They also do income protection, life insurance, and soon they'll be doing home insurance, car insurance, even pet insurance. So www.beatthebank.ie to get a quote in seconds. Right, the second thing I want to talk about is a Business Post article I read this week. So I've actually been thinking about it quite a bit since, because they went through housing spend across like different government departments, tax measures, state agencies, different schemes, and they came up with a figure of nearly 12 billion, so 11.8 billion. That's what the state is spending on housing in 2026. So 11.8 billion euro. And just for a bit of context, the entire health budget is somewhere around 25 billion. So we're spending close to half of what we spend on health on housing, and we still have a housing crisis where, so like, rents are record high, house prices are record high, homeless figures record high. So where is the money actually going? So there's 2.2 billion in local authority housing capital funding, 667 million on social housing current expenditure, 575 million on cost rental schemes, and 563 million on homeless accommodation. So that really stood out to me. So more than €500 million is being spent accommodating people who are homeless. So not actually providing them with a permanent home, but accommodating them while they are homeless. So there's another 470 million being spent on HAP. And on the tax side, there's 350 million for the rental tax credit, 250 million for Help to Buy, 250 million for the VAT reduction on new apartments, and 125 million from a corporate tax reduction connected to apartment construction. And then you've state agencies. So the Land Development Agency is 1.35 billion. The Housing Finance Agency, which they expect to lend 2 billion. And then the Housing Building Finance Ireland has a lending capacity of 730 million. Like, that's so confusing. So many things sound like they're doing the same thing, but they're getting hundreds and hundreds of million. It's like, that sounds like you're just doing what the other place is doing. So altogether, there are more than 40 different programs and schemes. And I think that number is kind of interesting in itself, because in the article, Michelle Norris from UCD, Professor Michelle Norris, should I say, makes the point in the article that the number and complexity of all these measures creates its own problems. So they're difficult to manage and very difficult to administer. So for me, the obvious question is, are we actually getting any value for that 11.8 billion? And if you listen to Dave McWilliams' he had a couple of podcasts recently with some experts, and it just shows the absolute waste when it comes to government spending, not just on housing, but across the board. And it's really, really depressing. But there are obviously different views on this. Owen O'Brien from Sinn Féin argues that too much state money is being used to subsidise private developers rather than directly building social and affordable homes. I would agree with that. And then the Department of Housing says that the measures are needed to accelerate supply, but we're not seeing any supply being accelerated. It's in fact, supply is getting less and less. And then you've Glenveagh Homes CEO Stephen Garvey. He argues that things like the tax measures make developments viable, which means more profitable, and should be seen as investment rather than simply a cost, which of course he would say that. But I just really struggle with the fact that we're spending nearly 12 billion last year and we built fewer than 1,000 genuinely affordable homes for purchase nationally. And at the same time, we're spending over $500 million on homeless accommodation. We're spending hundreds of millions on schemes like Help to Buy and First Home Scheme, which they say help buyers purchase homes at market prices. I disagree. I think they inflate the market prices. I think they prop them up. I think macroeconomically they are terrible policies. But I've talked about this loads of times before. And if you keep putting more money into the demand side of a housing market without increasing supply enough to meet that demand, you're going to put upward pressure on prices. And the ESRI has raised this issue with Help to Buy, yet we just keep doing different versions of the same thing over and over. And there's another question here as well. So what happens when the housing market becomes dependent on all of these supports? So if developers are making decisions based on reduced VAT, tax breaks, subsidies, government schemes, you can't just switch them off because if some developments only work financially because those supports exist, removing them could just stop projects being built, full stop. So then you end up with a housing market that needs more and more and more government intervention just to keep functioning. And I'd argue it's not even functioning. And then politically that creates a massive problem because every year there's pressure to keep the existing schemes, and then they introduce another scheme and then another tax measure and then another announcement, and suddenly you've got 40 more measures and another 11.8 billion being spent. Now that doesn't automatically mean that the money is being wasted. I guess like housing is obviously expensive, and building social and affordable housing is expensive, infrastructure is expensive, and just given the scale of the housing crisis we obviously need huge state investment. But it's just like, where is that going? Like, where is the money going? Because we're not seeing anything on the ground. Because if you're spending nearly 12 billion a year, I think it's really reasonable to ask, well, what are we actually getting for it? And for me, too much money is still going towards supporting market activity, supporting private investments, and too much is going towards like managing the consequences of the housing crisis after they happen. And like everything, we're always reactive here rather than proactive, and we're just still not directly delivering any genuinely affordable homes for people to buy. I'd much rather see more of that money going directly into building social housing, affordable purchase homes, infrastructure needed to unlock more housing. It might not create as many new schemes or whatever or announcements, but like surely the end goal has to be fairly simple: build more homes that people can actually afford. So that's it for this week. Home Buyer Ready is live now. Set up your free account, and I hope I've explained it a bit better, because it's more than just, say, a property report. The idea is to put as much of the home buying process as possible into one place, from everything from getting mortgage ready right through to getting your keys. So as I said, it's still being tested. Accounts are free. I just would love people to get on it, have a play with it, see what needs fixing. So go to homebuyerready.ie and set up your free account. And then the other side of things, nearly 12 billion a year now is going into housing, and that amount is absolutely insane. I know, given the crisis we're in, it's probably necessary. It's just that, like, the state clearly needs to spend huge amounts of money on housing. It's just whether or not we're actually spending it in the right places and whether we're actually getting any homes at the end of it, which I don't think we are. So if you found this episode useful, send it to somebody who's trying to buy a home. You can find me on Instagram at Crazy House Prices, and there's all bonus Q&As and stuff over on my Patreon. I have my book and all that, but really I'm kind of going to start shifting everything, all of that stuff, over to homebuyerready.ie. Anyway, thank you for listening. Slán go fóill.